The low hum of a Boeing 777 fades in. The sound deepens, rolling like thunder beneath the silence. How could a modern jet vanish without a trace? Netflix thought it had the answers, but it missed what really matters. To understand what really happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, we have to go back. Not to the documentaries or the speculation, but to the night itself. It's March 8, 2014. Kuala Lumpur International Airport lies under heavy, humid air. The monsoon season is ending. The sky is clear, the tarmac slick with rain. Gate C1 waits quietly in the terminal satellite wing. It's almost midnight. Inside the terminal, passengers stretch, scroll their phones, sip the last coffee before boarding. The announcement comes through the speakers, calm and routine. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 to Beijing, now boarding at Gate C1. No one pays much attention. It's a regular flight, a Boeing 777-200ER, one of the most reliable aircraft in the world. 6 hours to Beijing, a route flown hundreds of times before. Outside, the aircraft glows beneath white floodlights. Ground crews roll fuel trucks and cargo containers toward it. The plane takes on 49 metric tons of jet fuel, enough for the journey plus half an hour's reserve. Pallets of fruit and electronics slide into the belly of the jet. Technicians check tire pressure, lights, hydraulics. The Boeing's long silver wings glisten. At 11:30 p.m., the final checks begin. Inside the cockpit sit two pilots. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, calm, experienced, over 18,000 flight hours. A man who trains other pilots, who knows every sound this jet makes. Next to him, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 27 years old, on his final training flight before qualification. Ambitious, quiet, respectful. They go through the checklist, one line after another. Hydraulics, checked. Fuel, confirmed. Navigation lights, set. Transponder, standby. Both men know this aircraft as well as they know their own homes. In the cabin, flight attendants greet passengers. 239 people in total. Businessmen, students, families, a few children. A woman in seat 32A closes her eyes and leans back against the window. A man adjusts his watch to Beijing time. Somewhere in the rear galley, a flight attendant laughs softly. It's a normal night. Everything is calm. Everything works. At 12:25 a.m., the jet bridge pulls away. The heavy door seals with a metallic thud. From this point on, the Boeing is a sealed world, disconnected from the ground. Pushback begins. The aircraft reverses from Gate C1, lights flashing across wet pavement. Inside the cockpit, Zahari and Farik listen to instructions from air traffic control. Malaysia 370, taxi to runway 32 right. The captain releases the parking brake. The massive plane begins to move under its own power. Engines rumble low and deep. Passengers feel the vibration through the floor. The smell of fuel lingers faintly in the air. At the runway threshold, both engines stabilize. The air traffic controller clears them for takeoff. Malaysia 370, cleared for takeoff. Cleared for takeoff, Malaysia 370. Zahari pushes the throttles forward. The Rolls-Royce engines roar. The aircraft gathers speed. Faster, faster. Lights streaking past the windows. At 160 knots, Farik calls out. Rotate. The nose lifts. The city falls away beneath them. Below, the lights of Kuala Lumpur spread like fire across the black ground. Above, there is only darkness and cloud. The aircraft climbs into open sky. For the passengers, the transition feels smooth. No bumps, no turbulence. The seatbelt signs remain on. Cabin lights dim. The hum of the engine steadies to a constant drone. Inside the cockpit, the two pilots follow procedure. Departure frequency, 132.6. They contact air traffic control. Everything is routine. In the cabin, people settle in. A mother rocks her sleeping child. A businessman removes his glasses and folds them neatly into his shirt pocket. The flight attendants roll out carts of juice and tea. A woman in row 8 writes a text message that will never be delivered. The plane climbs to 35,000 feet. The world below vanishes beneath layers of cloud. Stars appear over the wings like scattered dust. At 12:40 a.m., the last radio call of the night comes through. The captain's voice is calm, almost casual. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those words will echo for years. After that, the radio falls silent. In the cabin, no one notices anything unusual. The crew continues to serve drinks. Some passengers have already fallen asleep. The engines drone on, steady and familiar. But in just a few minutes, this aircraft, this ordinary perfect flight, will vanish from radar screens across Southeast Asia. For now, though, the sky is calm. The jet glides north over the South China Sea, moonless and still. 239 people drift into sleep, unaware that history is already turning beneath them. 239 people board a flight that will never land. A clock ticks softly beneath the hum of engines. In the cockpit, two men sit side by side under the glow of digital instruments. Blue, white, and steady. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, adjusts his headset. He's been flying for more than 3 decades, over 18,000 hours in the air. To his colleagues, he's calm, methodical, the kind of pilot who double-checks even what he already knows. In photos, he smiles easily, a hobbyist who spends his off days building model airplanes or flying gliders over Penang. To his right, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 27. Young, careful, just finishing his training. This flight is supposed to be his last check ride before full certification. His parents will tell reporters later that he loved the sky since childhood, that he would come home from school and watch airliners descend over Subang Airport until sunset. Inside the cockpit, their voices are calm. Fuel 49 metric tons. Checked. Auto brake RTO. Checked. Transponder set to standby. The checklist rolls on, precise and quiet. Behind them, the crew moves through the aisles, counting passengers, checking seatbelts. The senior flight attendant, Patrick Gomez, reviews the safety demonstration card with a trainee beside him. For the cabin crew, nothing about tonight feels unusual. Zahari glances at the clock on his display. 12:36 a.m. He's done this route dozens of times. Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. A flight so ordinary it barely earns a glance from dispatch once airborne. He keys the radio. Lumpur ground, Malaysia 370, request pushback and start. Clearance comes back instantly. Malaysia 370, pushback approved, facing west. The tug driver outside acknowledges with a wave. The aircraft begins to move. Passengers feel the slow reverse motion, the slight tremor through the floor. The engine spool, air hisses, lights flicker across the cockpit glass. Engine 1 stable. Engine 2 stable. They taxi to the active runway. The first officer handles radios while Zahari keeps his hands on the tiller. This is company procedure. Captain drives on the ground, co-pilot talks. Farik's voice comes through clear over the headset. Malaysia 370 ready for departure runway 32 right. Malaysia 370, cleared for takeoff. Zahari eases the throttles forward. The Rolls-Royce Trents rise from a whisper to a deep, clean roar. The aircraft lunges ahead, pressing everyone into their seats. At 160 knots, Farik calls, rotate. The nose lifts. The Boeing leaves the earth. Outside the cockpit windows, Kuala Lumpur's orange grid of light stretches and then falls away into darkness. Positive rate. Gear up. The landing gear folds into the belly of the plane. A faint thud ripples through the cabin floor. For the next few minutes, the two men work in silence. Instruments level off at 18,000 feet. The departure controller hands them to Lumpur radar. Malaysia 370, climb flight level 350. Climb 350, Malaysia 370. The captain turns to his co-pilot. Your controls. My controls. Farik flies the jet northeast toward the South China Sea. Zahari handles communications. Inside the cabin, passengers settle into their seats. The lights dim to a soft amber glow. Drinks are served. The aisles fall quiet. From the flight deck, Everything looks perfect. Clear skies, smooth air. The weather radar shows nothing but blue. The moonless sky hides the sea completely. The horizon is invisible. At 1:19 a.m., they reach cruising altitude. Malaysian 370 maintaining flight level 350. Roger, Malaysia 370. It's the last normal exchange anyone will ever hear. 6 minutes later, the next scheduled radio handoff approaches. A simple instruction to contact Vietnamese airspace. Controllers in Kuala Lumpur call. Malaysia 370. Contact Ho Chi Minh Control on 120.9. Good night. The captain answers. His voice is calm, polite, routine. Good night, Malaysian 370. Those words, simple and unremarkable, will echo for years. The frequency changes. The radar blip continues east, then suddenly disappears. No distress call. No squawk code. Just silence. In the cockpit, the instrument lights remain steady. The hum of the engines doesn't change. But something unseen has shifted. A switch, a circuit, a plan. Somewhere between that last calm phrase and the dark expanse of ocean ahead, Flight 370 leaves the world behind. The passengers keep sleeping. The crew keeps moving through the aisles. No one knows that the signal from their plane has already vanished. A routine night, 2 skilled pilots, and a mystery that will haunt aviation forever. At 1:21 a.m., the last radar return from Flight 370 flickers across the Malaysian air traffic screen. A small green, moving steadily northeast toward Vietnam. Then, as the controllers prepare to hand the flight over, the signal vanishes. 1 second it's there. The next it's gone. No warning. No mayday. No distress call. In Kuala Lumpur's radar room, the controller hesitates. Maybe it's just a blip, a system refresh, a radar overlap. He waits a few seconds, then calls the aircraft. Malaysia 370, do you read? Silence. He tries again. Malaysia 370, Lumpur radar. Still nothing. He doesn't panic. Sometimes aircraft drop off radar temporarily during handovers, especially over border zones. He assumes Ho Chi Minh has them now, so he lets it go. But in Ho Chi Minh City, the Vietnamese controller is staring at an empty screen too. The aircraft never appeared on his radar. He calls. No answer. He tries the emergency frequency. Still nothing. For a few minutes, both controllers think the other is handling it. Those few minutes will become crucial because in that short window, Flight 370 is already changing course. Inside the cockpit, the world is quiet. The only light comes from the soft glow of the instruments. The captain reaches forward, his hand steady, deliberate. One by one, systems begin to go dark. First, the transponder, the device that tells air traffic controllers who and where you are. A twist of the dial, and the signal disappears from civilian radar. Then, the ACAR system, the data link that automatically reports maintenance updates to Malaysia Airlines. It stops transmitting. To the outside world, Flight 370 no longer exists. Inside, everything still works perfectly. The engines hum. The cabin pressure is normal. The autopilot holds course. The passengers sleep under dim cabin lights, unaware that the aircraft carrying them has just vanished from every radar screen in Southeast Asia. For the next few minutes, the plane flies on, silent and invisible. Then, slowly, the heading begins to change. The Boeing 777 banks left, gently at first, then more sharply, turning back across the Malaysian peninsula. Down below, the lights of the South China Sea fade behind. Ahead, the dark outline of the Malaysian coast approaches. On military radar screens across the region, a strange signal appears. An unidentified aircraft, large, steady, moving west. To radar operators, it looks like a ghost. No transponder, no ID, no flight plan. Just a solid echo gliding across the sky. None of them know it yet, but this is MH370 heading the wrong way. Back in Kuala Lumpur, air traffic controllers still believe the flight is somewhere near Vietnam. They make routine checks, expecting the pilots to contact Ho Chi Minh. When no call comes through, they phone Vietnamese control. "Do you have Malaysia 370? "No contact," comes the answer. For the next 10 minutes, both sides assume the other will reestablish communication. It's 1:40 a.m. before either of them realizes something is seriously wrong. Still, there's no emergency declared. No military scramble. Just confusion. Meanwhile, Flight 370 crosses back over the Malaysian coastline at 1:52 a.m., flying silently above the sleeping city of Penang. Below, the towns are lit like constellations. Above, in the cockpit, one man sits alone. The autopilot holds its course. The aircraft turns north, skimming the edge of Thai airspace before continuing toward the Andaman Sea. Whoever is at the controls knows exactly where the radar borders lie, how to hide in the seams between them. The entire maneuver is precise, controlled, and deliberate. This is no accident. Inside the cabin, the passengers feel nothing unusual. Some are still asleep. A few glance out of the windows and see only darkness. No one suspects that their flight path has completely reversed. In the control rooms below, the confusion deepens. Malaysia believes the plane is in Vietnam. Vietnam believes it's gone north. Cambodia's radar shows nothing. Hours will pass before anyone begins to search the right ocean. Back in Kuala Lumpur, the supervisor finally makes the call. "Contact Malaysia Airlines. Find out where 370 is." Dispatch checks the company's internal tracking system. On the screen, Flight 370 still appears to be cruising peacefully toward Beijing. They don't realize that the system isn't live. It's predicting the flight's position based on its last known speed and direction. They're looking at a ghost. As the world sleeps, Flight 370 flies on, silent, dark, and invisible, back across its own homeland, toward the sea. 239 people remain unaware that their flight, once so routine, has already left the map. And by the time the sun rises, the greatest mystery in modern aviation will already be unfolding. By 2 a.m., Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 has crossed the entire Malaysian peninsula. Below, the orange lights of coastal towns fade into the deep black of the Andaman Sea. To anyone awake in the cabin, the flight still feels calm, uneventful. The engines hum steadily, the air cool and dry. Flight attendants have dimmed the lights, the aisles are quiet, and most passengers are asleep. But the truth is, at this exact moment, there is only one conscious mind controlling the aircraft. Inside the cockpit, the world is reduced to the glow of screens and the steady rhythm of instruments. The captain breathes slowly through his oxygen mask. Outside, there is nothing, no horizon, no moonlight, no radio chatter. Just darkness. He reaches forward and adjusts the heading again. The Boeing 777 banks slightly to the right, aligning with a route that threads between Thai and Malaysian radar coverage. It is a narrow corridor, but one he knows well. Below him lies Penang Island, his birthplace. For a brief moment, the lights of his home shimmer through scattered clouds. Then they vanish behind him forever. In Kuala Lumpur's air traffic center, silence stretches on. It has now been nearly 40 minutes since the last contact. Controllers call again. "Malaysia 370, do you read?" Nothing. They call other aircraft in the area, asking them to relay messages. A Vietnam Airlines flight tries the same frequency. No response. At first, the controllers believe the plane may have suffered a communication failure. But as time drags on, the unease grows. There's no sign on radar, no confirmation from any tower between Malaysia and China. The supervisor leans over the console and frowns. Where is this plane? It's a question that will echo for years. Thousands of meters above the sea, the Boeing 777 continues west, maintaining altitude with mechanical precision. Whoever is flying knows the systems intimately. They know that turning off the transponder doesn't disable the aircraft. It simply erases it from the map. They know how long oxygen masks will last, how far radar beams stretch, and how to stay unseen. Every action is deliberate. Every minute is planned. As the jet glides past Penang, a faint signal pings on a military radar in northern Malaysia. The operators don't recognize it. Just a slow-moving, unidentified object without a transponder. One technician marks it briefly, assumes it's a commercial flight, then turns away. The radar trace continues northwest, slipping toward the edge of their coverage, and vanishes again. For a brief moment, Flight 370 exists only as a ghost echo on a screen that no one is really watching. At 2:15 a.m., Malaysia Airlines Dispatch tries sending a data message to the aircraft through ACARS. It never delivers. The system on board has been manually disabled. They try again, nothing. No one at the airline realizes that their messages are vanishing into silence over the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the plane turns again, now heading northwest, parallel to the coast of Sumatra. Every mile it flies takes it deeper into the shadows, farther from help, farther from detection. No one on the ground knows that it is still in the air. By 2:40 a.m., confusion turns into quiet panic in the control rooms. Kuala Lumpur calls Ho Chi Minh again. Vietnam says they never made contact. Malaysia calls China. Beijing has not heard a word. The controllers replay radar tapes, searching for the missing blip. At 3 a.m., an emergency phase should have been declared. But it isn't. Procedures are followed mechanically. Calls are logged, messages sent, but no search begins. The assumption, still, is that the plane is somewhere over Vietnam, perhaps suffering radio issues. In reality, Flight 370 is hundreds of kilometers away, climbing toward the dark, empty sky of the Indian Ocean. The captain glances at the clock. The cabin behind him is silent. The passengers, starved of oxygen, have long since drifted into unconsciousness. The first officer never made it back to the cockpit. The man at the controls is alone. He steadies the autopilot, sets a course toward open ocean, and lets the jet fly on. The lights inside the cockpit dim. The sky outside is a void. For the next 6 hours, the aircraft will leave no voice, no signal, no trace. Only faint electronic whispers reaching distant satellites thousands of kilometers above. And when investigators later replay this night, they will find that between 1:21 and 2:40 a.m., the entire world simply lost track of Flight 370, a modern airliner, filled with 239 souls, slipped quietly into the dark, and kept on flying. By 3:30 a.m., the last radar trace of the unidentified aircraft fades into the darkness beyond Malaysia's northwestern coast. On every screen in every control tower, the sky looks clean again, blank. But somewhere over the Indian Ocean, a Boeing 777 still flies on autopilot, steady and silent. No one on the ground knows it yet. The world still believes Flight 370 vanished near Vietnam. Even the airline's dispatch computers continue projecting its course toward Beijing, unaware that the data they're showing are predictions, not reality. Inside the cockpit, the captain sits alone. The only sound is the low hum of ventilation and the rhythmic click of the autopilot servos. The cabin behind him is silent. The air is thin now. The passengers and crew, unconscious. The oxygen masks have long stopped flowing. He reaches for the overhead panel, switching off the exterior lights. The jet becomes invisible against the night. Outside the windows, nothing. No moon, no horizon, just the black curve of the earth. Hours pass. The aircraft keeps its bearing northwest, then gradually banks left again, aligning with a southbound heading over open water. Each change precise, smooth, deliberate. Far below, fishermen off the coast of Sumatra glimpse a faint streak of light sliding silently across the sky. None of them realize what they've seen. At 2:25 a.m., a satellite orbiting high above the Indian Ocean receives a faint electronic handshake from the plane. It's not a voice transmission or radar return, just a ping, a simple, "I'm here." Engineers will find it later in the Inmarsat data, the only proof that the aircraft was still alive. For now, it means nothing. No one at Malaysia Airlines sees it. No one at air traffic control even knows such a signal exists. The aircraft continues its long, slow flight into emptiness. Back on land, the confusion deepens. Malaysia calls Vietnam again. Vietnam calls Beijing. Everyone is missing the same plane. Every radar operator assumes someone else is tracking it. By dawn, more than 5 hours after takeoff, the first news alerts begin to circulate. Malaysia Airlines confirms contact lost with Flight 370. Families wake to text messages from relatives that will never arrive. Reporters rush to Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Cameras crowd the arrival gate in Beijing where nothing will appear. In the sky, the Boeing 777 flies on autopilot, engines still roaring, a ghost across the Southern Ocean. No radio, no transponder, no answers, just a machine obeying its last command. The sun begins to rise over the horizon, painting the clouds gold. For a brief moment, the fuselage glows in the light. Then the shadow returns. Somewhere in that endless expanse between Sumatra and the open Indian Ocean, the signal will flicker once more before vanishing forever. The world will search the wrong seas, ask the wrong questions, and build stories that miss the simplest truth. The plane never disappeared in an instant. It slipped away slowly, hour by hour, decision by decision, until there was nothing left but silence. By the time morning light touches the edges of the Indian Ocean, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 has been missing for nearly 6 hours. At Kuala Lumpur International, the departure boards still show the flight number in green. On time. No one has updated it yet. Families begin to gather near the information desk, clutching printouts and phones that will never ring again. Inside the airline's operations room, confusion has turned to disbelief. The dispatch team replays the flight's last transmission. "Good night, Malaysian 370. The words sound calm, unremarkable, almost friendly. Nothing about them suggests disaster, yet every radar scope in the region shows nothing. Engineers comb through their systems. Then, quietly, a technician notices something strange. An automatic ping received from the plane's satellite system hours after radio contact was lost. It isn't a message. It's a kind of heartbeat, a log-on request from the aircraft to a satellite high above the Indian Ocean. Nobody in the control center understands it yet, but that single pulse means the plane was still in the air long after everyone thought it had crashed. In the first hours of daylight, rescue orders go out to the South China Sea. Boats, planes, and helicopters scour the waters east of Malaysia, searching for floating debris, oil slicks, anything. They find nothing, because Flight 370 isn't there. It's hundreds of miles away, already deep into the western sky. Military radar recordings reviewed later will show the truth. A wide, arcing turn over Penang, then a long flight up the Strait of Malacca, across the Andaman Sea, and finally into the emptiness of the Southern Ocean. Whoever controlled the aircraft knew exactly where radar coverage ended and how to slip through it. By late morning, Malaysia Airlines calls a press conference. Cameras flash. Officials repeat the same line again and again. "We have lost contact with the aircraft." No one says the word crash yet. They don't have proof. All they have is absence. In living rooms around the world, people watch the news ticker roll across screens. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 missing. Last contact 1:19 a.m. It sounds impossible. How can a jet disappear in an age of satellites and instant tracking? While reporters speak to aviation experts and families, the data engineers at Inmarsat keep digging through raw transmissions. They notice a pattern. 6 automatic handshakes between the satellite and the missing aircraft, each one an hour apart. The final one comes at 8:19 a.m., long after sunrise, long after the world started searching the wrong sea. That last signal draws a faint arc across a map of the Indian Ocean. It isn't a location, just a distance, a curve showing everywhere the plane could have been when it sent its final whisper into space. Somewhere along that curve, the flight ends. The media will call it the moment of disappearance. But in truth, the Boeing never vanished in an instant. It faded slowly, quietly, into the most remote corner of the planet, leaving behind nothing but questions. And for the first time, the world realizes the search for Flight 370 has only just begun. As the morning of March 8th unfolds, confusion spreads from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The families waiting at the arrival gate in China have been told the flight is delayed. Hours later, an announcement crackles over the loudspeaker. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is currently uncontactable. Gasps fill the terminal. Some begin to cry, others call relatives in Malaysia, hoping someone might have heard different news. No one has. By noon, the story has reached every news network in Asia. A missing jet. 239 people. No distress call. No debris. Nothing. Reporters flood the airline's headquarters. Government officials scramble for information. But inside Malaysia's control centers, the reality is clear. No one knows where Flight 370 went after 1:21 a.m. At 2 p.m., radar technicians replay data from the night before. They notice something strange. A large, unidentified aircraft had crossed back over Malaysia hours after contact was lost. It traveled west, climbed, then vanished into open water. One officer points at the screen. That could be 370. The room falls silent. If this is true, the plane didn't crash near Vietnam. Turned around. Came back. Meanwhile, engineers at Inmarsat, the British satellite company, begin analyzing the faint handshake signals detected in the early hours. These aren't normal flight messages. They're background system checks, automatic pings that say only one thing. The aircraft satellite unit was still powered on. Every 60 minutes after 2:25 a.m., another handshake appeared. One at 3:41, another at 4:41, then 5:41, 6:41, 7:41, and finally, a last burst at 8:19 a.m. Each ping places the aircraft somewhere along a wide curved line across the Indian Ocean, arcs that will later become famous as the Seven Rings. It means the jet didn't just vanish. It flew for nearly 7 hours after all contact was lost. Back in Kuala Lumpur, the Prime Minister orders a full emergency response. Dozens of aircraft and ships are dispatched into the South China Sea. Completely the wrong direction. For days, the search focuses there, combing waters that hold nothing but waves. The real trail, silent, invisible, stretches in the opposite direction, across the vast southern ocean where few ships ever sail. That night, the faces of the missing passengers fill every television screen. A little boy in a red sweater, couple holding hands, a group of young Chinese artists on their way to an exhibition. Their photos are framed by a single, haunting question. How does a plane just disappear? The world demands answers. Theories erupt across newsrooms and message boards. Some claim terrorism. Others, mechanical failure. Still others, something supernatural. But among investigators, one possibility begins to emerge: deliberate action. Whoever controlled Flight 370 knew the systems, the routes, the gaps in radar. This wasn't random. It was calculated. In the quiet halls of Malaysia Airlines headquarters, technicians finally confirm what Inmarsat's data suggested. The aircraft kept flying for hours beyond its last known position. It didn't simply drop out of the sky. It continued across the Indian Ocean until its fuel was gone. One engineer whispers to another. He knew exactly what he was doing. They don't say his name aloud, but they're thinking of one man, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. Outside, the media gathers beneath fluorescent lights as officials read a single line from a prepared statement. We are now concluding that the aircraft's final position was somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. No one claps. No one cheers. Families collapse in tears. For the rest of the world, the story has just turned from mystery to tragedy. But for investigators, it's only beginning. Because the question that now hangs in the air isn't where the plane went. It's why. Weeks pass. Search vessels comb thousands of square miles of ocean. Nothing. Not a single seat cushion, not a life vest, not a scrap of metal. Satellite engineers at Inmarsat work in silence. They refine the final handshake data and produce two arcs. One north, stretching toward Central Asia, and one south, deep into the Indian Ocean. The northern route would have taken the jet across dozens of radar networks. No one saw it. That leaves only one possibility: the southern arc, across the open sea where no radar reaches, no ships sail, and no one listens. In March 2014, the search shifts west. Planes from Australia, Malaysia, China, and the United States sweep the Indian Ocean. Each day brings false hope: oil slicks that lead nowhere, floating debris that turns out to be trash. Weeks turn into months. The ocean remains silent. Then, in 2015, a piece of wreckage washes ashore on the French island of Réunion. A wing fragment, the flaperon, confirmed to belong to MH370. It's the first solid proof the aircraft ended its flight in the southern Indian Ocean. More debris follows in later years. Fragments of the cabin interior, wing panels, a piece of engine cowling marked Rolls-Royce. Each item tells the same story. The jet broke apart in the sea, far from any human eye. Investigators reconstruct the timeline from fragments of data. 12:41 a.m. Takeoff. 1:21 a.m. Last radio call. 1:22 a.m. Transponder off. 2:25 a.m. First satellite handshake. 8:19 a.m. Final signal. A last, faint whisper from the aircraft before silence forever. 7 hours of flight after disappearing from radar. 7 hours of unanswered questions. Netflix and other documentaries would later tell the story as one of mystery, conspiracy, or accident. But the truth, drawn from the evidence, is colder and simpler. The aircraft didn't vanish by chance. It was guided there, step by step, system by system, into one of the most remote places on Earth. Whoever sat in that cockpit knew how to disappear. In the years that follow, hundreds of theories circulate online. Some claim hijacking, others a cargo explosion. Some insist on alien abduction or black ops involvement. None fit the data. The radar trail, the satellite handshakes, the simulator routes all point to a single conclusion: a controlled, deliberate flight to the south. Today, more than a decade later, the wreck lies somewhere beneath the Indian Ocean, 12,000 feet down in darkness. The flight recorders may never be found, but the evidence left behind tells its own story. A skilled pilot, a meticulously planned route, a decision made in silence. The families still wait. Some refuse to accept the ocean as the final answer. Each year, on March 8th, they gather with candles and photos, still asking the same question. Why? There are no final words from the cockpit. No black box recording to explain what happened. Only fragments of data, drifting across the sky, whispering of a journey that defied reason and vanished beyond reach. In the end, it wasn't satellites or radars or technology that failed. It was us, our belief that in the modern world, nothing can simply disappear. But somewhere beyond the seventh arc, beneath waves that have no memory, Flight 370 sleeps in silence. 239 people board a flight that never landed. And the ocean, vast, patient, endless, keeps its secret still.